This news changes everything. This news is so big and so crazy that it could redefine the world order. And there's people who try and dismiss it and say, well, it's not that big of a deal. It's not going to work, et cetera, et cetera. But what's happening is big. What's happening is very, very big on the international scene. And ignoring it, I think, is something you do at your own peril as an investor, as a human existing in the modern world, because this could be the biggest challenge to the US-led and US dollar-dominated world order that we've seen in a very, very long time. So this is from Russia. Russia confirming that BRICS will create a gold-backed currency. Now, this is potentially a move internationally to a gold standard for currencies. You got to remember, all the currency out there right now, it's paper garbage. It's paper garbage. US dollars, paper garbage. Euros, paper garbage. The yen's, paper garbage. The rubles, paper garbage. The yuan's, paper garbage. It's all garbage. It's all junk. It's all just paper. Paper. Hopes and dreams, baby. What Russia and the BRICS group more broadly, that's Brazil, that's India, that's China, that's South Africa, and others. We'll get to that in a second. But what they're proposing here is bringing back the gold standard to currencies, bringing back a fairer monetary system. Obviously, I wish they were using Bitcoin, don't we? Yes, of course, we want them to use Bitcoin, but they're not using Bitcoin, using gold, right? Gold's the old way of doing things, but they're trying to make it the new way of doing things and try and bring some kind of sanity back to monetary policy globally. Now, you cannot like the people doing this, but you can certainly, I think, would be misguided to not recognize this as a very important announcement, because I think it is a very important announcement. Of course, potentially very big if it gets passed for gold investors. Silver investors as well will likely benefit from this. So this is definitely some very big news if we start seeing gold being used between the BRICS nations to settle international transactions, or gold being demanded by the BRICS nations. So when France or Canada or the United States or Australia, when they want to buy something from China or Russia or someone else, they're going to say, yeah, cool, pay us in gold. That changes everything. That changes everything real fast and creates a giant wealth transfer from the West to the East of the funny money into real money. And of course, Bank of America coming out almost comically and saying, we're going to downgrade gold and silver prices 2023. That's not going to be important. Of course, we're going to see all of the stops being pulled out here. We're going to see JP Morgan fight against this. We're going to see the US government fighting back against this, because the last thing they want to do is to see a gold standard come back, because it will show that the emperor is wearing no clothes. And the emperor in this case, of course, is the US dollar. BRICS countries currently represent 41% of global population. This is from Bitcoin News. If they were to expand their coalition by including the following 40 countries that have applied for membership, yes, there's 40 countries that currently want to join the BRICS group. That would represent 57% of the global population. And this is everything from Algeria, Argentina, Bahrain, Bangladesh, Belarus, Egypt, Indonesia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Senegal, Sudan, Syria, the UAE, Thailand, Tunisia, Turkey, Uruguay, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe, amongst others. There's a lot of countries ready to join, and many of these countries are massive natural resource producers. They produce giant amounts of food, giant amounts of energy, metals, timber, basically everything that the world needs to run, they make and export largely. And they're going to start demanding gold for it if the BRICS currency does go forward, of course. Alistair McLeod says, yesterday we had confirmed the most important monetary development since the Bretton Woods Agreement 80 years ago. BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization will adopt a gold standard for trade. That's over 50% of global GDP and 64% of the world's population. That's, of course, if all the new members join the BRICS group. We shall see. But I would imagine that we're going to see a pretty aggressive expansion of the BRICS grouping in the not so distant future. But it is a big damn deal and has big implications for the future of the US dollar, I think, in particular. Now, Silver Santa here points out a new gold-backed currency would mean the gradual end of fiat money, right? Why would you want to hold US dollars or euros when all they do is get inflated every year? Right. And look, it's not to say the gold market's perfect. Gold, it's also inflationary. Wait till we start dragging asteroids out of the sky and sucking the gold off them too. I'm sure it's going to happen at some point. As soon as somebody can make a penny off of doing that, they're going to do it. and so on and so forth. Plus the paper market for gold is pretty crazy. So look, there's a lot of stuff to unpack here, and it's not going to be an easy journey towards this, and it may never even get off the ground, so we'll have to see how it plays out. But my guess would be is that the BRICS nations, particularly China, India, maybe Brazil here as well, buying up a lot of gold, and Russia have been buying way more gold than they've been letting on, and that they've stacked up way more gold than we can possibly imagine. You got to remember that Russia has gigantic gold reserves, and they can easily just buy gold straight from their miners domestically and not tell anybody. They can sell gold from their Russian mines to the Chinese and not have to tell anybody. So they might have got a lot more gold stacked up than anybody thinks. Now, the USA does have the biggest gold supply in the world, reportedly. I say reportedly because would it surprise you if they were lying about that? Would it surprise you if the USA didn't really have all that much gold left? And think about this. Look how much in debt they are. Look how much they spend money on dumb stuff. You think they're going to keep all the gold around? Maybe they do. Maybe they're smart enough to do that and not sell off their giant gold reserves. Maybe they did. Would you be surprised? I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I almost expect that kind of stuff to happen. He goes on to say more fiat money would be available in the West. It would thus become less valuable as we see, for example, China and countries like this dumping U.S. Treasury bonds, using it to buy up gold, trading essentially the relatively worthless fiat money for real money, which is gold. Bring a whole new level of life into the gold market that we haven't seen in a very, very, very long time. All imported assets would get much more expensive. Oil, metal, wheat, gas, all the things that the BRICS countries and their new applicants sell. Russia, for example, is the biggest producer and exporter of wheat in the world. I think it's the second or third biggest producer of oil in the world, and potentially the first or second biggest exporter of natural gas in the world, along with major other things like oats and so on and so forth, sunflowers and et cetera, so like for sunflower oil. So a big deal. And of course, not just Russia. It's not just Russia, right? It's all the BRICS group that are going to be doing this, plus their potential 41 new members, which represent a majority of global GDP and a majority of global population. Again, it's a very, very big deal. Silver Santa goes on to say our wealth would gradually be transferred from the West to the East. We couldn't simply print our worthless money anymore to obtain real assets in the places. Nobody will want that currency. We'll need to earn the money by producing goods and selling them to the BRICS nations. Our debt-loaded nations would implode. How do we continue to pay for defense, social security, entitlements, etc.? Very, very interesting. He says this is world war material, believe me. Yeah, and that's the scary part. That's the scary implication of this stuff here, is that rarely do we see world orders end peacefully. When the Soviet Union was dismantled and the Cold War ended, that was such a big event because we didn't kill each other. There was no giant conflict. There was no World War III. The Cold War never became the new super hot war where missiles dropped on everybody. But the question will be, will there be a giant new war over a potential move by the rest of the world, the BRICS nations, leading the way towards a gold standard? Because it will reveal in so many ways that, again, we have the emperor with no clothes analogy here, that the USA has been wearing no clothes. Right? They're $32 trillion in debt. Actually, probably $33 trillion in debt now, because breaking the U.S. government debt has increased by over $1 trillion since the debt ceiling was lifted last month. That puts them on around $33 trillion. $1 trillion in a month. Come on, man. Come on. And the only solution to paying off that $33 trillion debt, print more money, more inflation, more debasement of your savings. It's no wonder the rest of the world doesn't want to hold US dollars anymore, and why we've seen in the last 6 months more stories than we've had in the last 60 years about people moving away from the US dollar towards gold, towards alternatives, and forming new economic unions, right? And look, we talk about this because it's a big story. It's very important to understand these things are going on, right? I don't want anyone to suffer anywhere. I don't want people in the United States to have a hard time because their asshat politicians have destroyed their currency. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's nothing but pain and suffering for regular people. Well, the people who caused this mess, they don't have to deal with these consequences, right? Their sons don't go off and fight the wars. Nope. That's up to regular people to do. And this right here, I thought was a pretty powerful short video here. Again, from Bitcoin News. It's no longer the first world and the third world, but the ascending world order and the descending world. So on top, we have the G7. And on the bottom, we have just the BRICS group, not without the 41 new members, just the current 5 members. When we have the 41 new members, it's going to change everything real fast. We see the G7 continuing to fall and the BRICS group continuing to rise, right? Big things are afoot. And by the end of this decade, I think we're going to be living in a very different world. Things could happen that fast, right? So definitely something worth keeping an eye on if you have, I don't know, if you live in this world, I would say, but certainly if you have any kind of investments in anything, or if you have a lot of your wealth sitting particularly in US dollars, for example, you may want to consider, well, buying some Bitcoin, buying some gold, maybe some other stuff, but certainly worth knowing about the situation at the very least.